Okay, it's time to put the pistons in, and I'm going to do 1 and 5, and that's all I'm going to do on camera because it's the same for the rest, because this is a multi-step system. When you start this project, you need to stay on it until it's done, because there's a handful of things you got to do that you can do some of it in advance, but if you don't think you're going to be able to do it from start to finish, you probably ought not do that. Number one is oil the cylinders. You have to, boy, this is the fun thing. Make sure the crank is in the location it needs to be in. In this particular case, we want it as low as possible. That's number one. Make sure your pistons are all ready to go. They're cleaned, they got the bearings in them, and you've got the rings and everything on them, and the rings are not lined up with each other in any way, shape, or form. Stagger the rings so that none of the, where they come together, are the same. In other words, when you're looking at this, here's Mr. Top ring. You see the gap in it. I can squeeze it together. All right, you don't want this ring to line up. I gotta find it. You do not want these to line up together. This is bad. So don't do that. So keep them off from each other best you can. Same with the oil rings. You don't want any of these oil rings to line up with anything. So I've got them, everything is staggered on all of them, but I'll double check before I put it in. So obviously, we need to take the rod cap back off. Need to make sure that the crank journal is clean, which I have, and it is. And I didn't clean the top of this bearing off from the, excuse me, the bottom of the bearing from that. I forgot to do that on all of them. That's great. Let me get a little cleaner here. I forgot to get the clean the ring cap, the cap off from the plastic gauge. I knew I was forgetting something. So we'll do these two, like I said, because we're going to do these two first. So I want to make sure that it's done here. Okay. And I have to grab number 5 first, which really does not make any difference at this point. Okay, now the reason I call this multiple steps is this. Again, make sure the rings are not lined up, which I already have on this one. It's the one I showed you. This is number 5. Make sure that the rod cap is 100% clean. Make sure the crank is 100% clean. Then what you want to do is open up your, because this needs to be lubed prior to you putting it in, because you can't get to it hardly once it's on. So put your assembly lube on the rod bearing like so. And I have these. I suggest if you have the studs sticking out or down, the LS don't, but all the old small box Gen 1s and all the other ones that's got the bolt sticking down, I like to use these little things. Where you at? And what these do are these are protecting the rod bolt from hitting the crankshaft while you're sliding it in, because you actually are going to have to turn the engine over to compress the rings and push it in with a hammer or something lightweight on the end, rubber preferably, and you need to push that in. Well, that's going to be a pain because you're going to have trouble watching this and pushing everything at the same time, making sure you're holding on to your, I'll show you here in a minute what I'm talking about. We're now to the point where it is time. Let me make sure still nothing is lined up. Nope, everything looks good. I'm using some Shell Rotella 30 weight, not because this is what I prefer, this is what I have laying around. It's not 100% full. It's going to make a big mess. I'm also going to turn the engine, since number 5 is first, be the driver's side. I'm going to turn it right to this position here, well, or wherever I can get this thing to stop at, which in this case is here. That's better than nothing. Make sure the cylinder's clean. I don't have any more gloves, so pour the old oil on the hand. Yay! Prefer that you put gloves on. Safety first. Hydrocarbon on the old hands is probably not the best. Lube the cylinder all the way up, and then take the piston you're going to put in. The same deal. Lube it all up. Lube the rings. This is where the rings will turn. You got to make sure that you're not doing these things. there is no such thing as too much oil until it fills your boot up, if that makes any sense. You want this stuff to have oil on it. Alright, now that that's it, now you got to make sure you're putting it in the right direction. So this is going to go like this. I'm going to start the skirt by hand. Come on, stop. There you go. And it's kind of tight. No, don't beat it. Come on. Come on. It's lubricated. It should go on there easy. Stop it short. Again, double check your rings. That is something you really want to do, is to make sure that those rings are not lined up with each other. And this is a spring compressor, or excuse me, this specifically is a ring compressor. And it'll slide on. Make sure all the rings are on where it belongs. Go past the bottom of the rings. Make sure it's flush with the block. I don't have the tool that came with it anymore, so I use a 1/4 inch ratchet, which works perfect. Get as tight as you possibly can. Looks like it could go a little bit more. Come on. But it's not wanting to, so we're going to see if that works or not. And I am using my lost that I had a little bit ago. There it is. Okay, you got to make sure that that stays on tight against the block. And slowly start tapping it in. If it hits a spot where it quits moving, stop. Pull it back off and find out what's happened. A ring has slipped out of your... So I'm having trouble holding everything together. It's starting to go over the rod now, or the crank. Make sure she's still on there tight. And this just popped off there, which I don't think it was supposed to do yet. Nope. The top ring, although it did compress, I didn't like what it was doing. Like I said, not everything works as planned every time. Now double check, everything is lined up, there's no debris anywhere you don't want it, and just keep tapping it in. I know you can't probably see what I'm doing all together, but with these rubber deals on there, it will not allow that to hit that crank and booger it up. Bottom out. And there you go. Now you can pull your rubber cap things off, whatever you call them, whatever you want to call them. I call it a crank protector. Turn it back over. This is the thing, is you got to move this around over and over and over again. And grab your rod cap again. Make sure it's clean. And then this particular case, since it's going on, I like to run a little bit on the sides so that at first startup this rod is not rubbing on a crankshaft or against the other rod, because they actually rub opposite of each other. So your fingers are clean, since I don't have any. And then put the cap on. And since this does not have to come back apart, still at 24 pounds. And I will go back through them again, most likely off camera, but I will make sure that they're all retorqued. Make sure she's pulled over as far as to go this way, because your next one's got to go on and you're going to be fighting it a bit. So Now we're going to do the opposite side. So I've got number 1 piston this time. Taking the rod cap off. It's the same scenario. Cap off. Make sure there's no debris on the bearing. And a little debris. Oh, and I just made it a whole lot worse. This is what happens when your fingers are dirty because you don't have gloves. That's where things get stupid, when you don't keep it clean. And I am not helping its cause a bit. Alright, there we go. Alright. I want to put the rubber doodads on the studs. I don't remember what they're called. I just call them a crank protector, rod bolt, crank protector, rod bolt cover. I don't know really what they're called. I've owned them for years. There's actually another set in my toolbox that are never even been opened. They're still in plastic, so I don't remember where they. Sometimes they'll come with a good set of pistons. They'll actually come with them. But all right, make sure that your cylinder's clean. Same scenario. Oil up the cylinder. Oil up the piston. Oh, that was way too much. I just poured my hand clear full of oil. Like I said, little's good, a whole lot more's better. Yeah. Alright, we're going to double check ring gap. Make sure nothing is lined up. Nope, looks good. Piston goes forward like yay. Where are you at? Back it off a tad. Wipe the 400 gallons of oil off your hand. Ring compressor back on. I know I'm almost off camera here, but 4-inch bore is about as big as this thing wants to go. So, and that's about what these are. Actually, they're 4 and 30 thousandths more. So you're almost, come on, you're almost to its max. And they make all kinds of different types of compressors. I mean, you're not limited to what I've got here or what you can get at a store. Do your research and get the best that you can if you're going to be doing this all the time, especially. In my case, I do this all the time, but I do so many different engine sizes, it's hard to uh-oh, almost don't, why did you turn? Come on now, piston turn, there we go. It's fighting me some. I don't know if I can get it any tighter than that or not. Well, let's see what happens. I'll make sure it's starting on there. It is. I'm going to hold this compressor, make sure it's on there right. And the engine's going away from me. Okay, something is not liking what I'm doing. No, something's not right. Oh, I see. The whole thing is trying to go in. Actually caught the edge of that and started trying to go in too. And make sure she's turned as straight as it'll go. It should just line right up. And it's in. Let's get this garbage out of the way. Like I said, it's not a huge deal, but it is a big deal. If you get one of them rings pinned in there funny and you break that ring, and you got to buy new rings. Okay, something I do see here is that this bearing has actually turned out. Now it will press itself back in. It does not have a choice when the other bearing goes down against it. But just pay attention to stuff like that. It actually was not supposed to do that because that other end was the... I really don't want to push on that. I don't really have anything to push on it with. I'm going to move that bearing just a tad. This is probably stupid. There it went. It was fine. Didn't have that much pressure on it. Just I didn't like what it was doing. The bearing actually was trying to come out this side. The problem is the lock is on the other side, which means it was pushing past the lock. I don't know why it was doing that. I don't like when stuff happens that I don't understand. Alright, same deal. Lube everything up, make sure there's no debris in it. And see, that's not... Something is not squared up here proper. I think the piston's are turned just a tad. Okay, why are we doing that? I've never had that happen. I don't understand what's happening here. It acts like the rods are... Oh, I guess I had it off kilter just a bit because it went right on. Idiot. Sometimes I impress even myself how things can actually just be a pain in the butt. Let's roll her back up top. They are out there making all kinds of racket. I'm gonna have to go to AutoZone and get me some more gloves. Stop it. My old torque wrenches are 1975 and I hate getting a new one. So Craftsman's been around the block for a long time, but it's starting to aggravate me. It's starting to get that skippy tooth thing to it, and I just don't know what to do if you follow what I'm saying. So anyway, okay, now we have 1 and 5 in. I'm probably going to have to put the bolt or the crank in because it's not going to be too long where I'm not going to be able to turn this thing by hand. I probably can't now without grabbing a hold of something I don't want to get dirty. Oh yeah, yep, she's just 2 of them, snug her up. So, alright guys, it's a pretty simple setup. If you watched any of my LS videos, it's always the same when it comes to a standard engine. There's a lot of people out there who are scared to work on stuff because there's a lot of moving parts, and there are. You have to have a trustworthy machinist if you have to have it machined. You have to have some tools that you wouldn't ordinarily own. Knowledge is easy to get. These kind of videos, books, Google, I mean there's a million different ways to get information of torque specs and numbers, and I'm going off the book because I'm old school. But here's what I am going to do. I'm not buttoning this up until I get some more numbers. If I see anything else that the mains need to be torqued different, or that the main caps or the rod caps need torqued different, and I'm also going to look up head just in case there's something else wrong. But I am going to go Google it and see if there's anything that's maybe new or improved or different or whatever. But as far as the basics, this is how it goes. Oil all the cylinders. Make sure you lube the heck out of those bearings. A little is good, a whole lot more is better in this case. So lube the crap out of it. And then what I normally do, we will get to that when we get to that point, once everything is in, the oil pump is bolted down the way I want it, pickup tube is bolted down, the gasket is on the oil pan, and I'm ready to put the oil pan in. The bolts are handy, everything is ready to go. I'm going to take some oil and I'm actually going to pour on this, and the reason I'm doing that is to actually do the wrist pins themselves on the pistons to make sure that they're oiled up. And I'll spin the engine over a few times. I'll actually even pour some, just like on the LS's, I'll actually pour some in the pickup tube, and then I'll turn the engine over just to make sure it's pulling down a little bit. And I'll also will already have had the cam and the front cover, timing change, front cover, everything will actually already be on it, so that when the oil pan goes on, it's a one-time deal and it's finished. I don't have to monkey around with it. It's all done, and the oil can't run out them front holes or anything. But that's how I normally do it. And when we get to that point, I'll bring you back. But you got the idea. There's a lot of people out there showing you how to build an engine. This is simple stuff. You just have to have certain tools again. So all right, if you have any questions or anything on it, obviously this will be done probably 2 or 3 months before this video comes out. The engine will probably already be in the car running. But if you have any specific questions, I've got engines sitting around here everywhere. I don't have Ford engines, but I have engines sitting everywhere. If you need to see something specific, you know, we might be able to pull it off. I might be able to pull it up and do it. I've got some LS stuff that's going to be coming up probably in spring. I know it's a few months away for your LS guys. It's going to be a little bit. Just kind of the way it works. I have other things prioritized that BMW's got to get done and gone. This Mustang needs to be able to be completely done mechanical so it can run and move out of the garage so I can move other stuff in. So, you know, we have a lot of things that need to be done. So, all right, we'll bring you back.